think it's 6 o'clock by my watch, so why don't we get this started? This is the City Council work session for December 20th, 2021. The meeting is now called to order. There is an agenda in Spanish on our website, so please check that out if you would like. Sue, a roll call, please.
Councilor McBride.
Here.
Councilor Cofield. Councilor Yarnell Holloman.
Here.
Councilor Martinez Plancarte.
Present.
Mayor Rogers.
Present.
Councilor Bacon.
Thought I
Did she
just saw her.
disappear?
She
I just saw
disappeared.
her. Councilor Finley.
Here.
Denise is present. I think she may have just gotten disconnected temporarily.
Okay, thank you. All right, review of the council agenda and meeting. Anyone?
Mr. Mayor, recall during our agenda
I
review
think-
meeting today,
I think Council President
2:30.
Finley's got it, I think.
you wanted to pull that resolution off.
Right. I think it was
Okay.
7C. Council President. Yep. All right, well, while Stephanie's technology, I'd like to, at City Attorney's request, we'd like to pull 7C from consent and make it a new item. This is participation in recipient of national opioid litigation settlements. It's according to James, it's evolving, so he'd like to talk a little bit about it as a new business item. So if that's okay with you all. All right, anything else council business wise? All right, seeing none, let's move on to presentations. This is legislative redistricting. All right. And I know we've got Kim from the COG. Good evening, Kim. And staff-wise, Doug there it is. Sue's got this one. I should know that. All right.
My name's on the report.
Yes, it is. You are right. All right. Thank you and good evening.
So tonight, Council, we are bringing back to you the 3 map alternatives to rebalance the city's legislative districts. Staff last met with Council August 16th, 2021 on the need to rebalance the city's districts. Since that time, the Oregon Secretary of State has issued Directive 2021-1, and the city has entered into a contract for technical services to complete this work. The Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments is our technical consultant. The census count determines political representation at all levels of government. Redistricting is the redrawing of boundaries for areas where people elect their representatives. And Newberg councilors must live in the district they represent. It does not affect elections, as councilors are elected by a citywide vote, otherwise known as split territorial representation. So you might be quizzed on that later. Just kidding. So Chapter 7, Section 28 of the city charter sets 6 districts for the council. The mayor is an at-large position. The redistricting data includes council population by race, ethnicity, Hispanic or Latino origin, voting age, housing occupancy status, and group quarter population, all at the census block level. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Kim, who's going from Sapunar from the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, is going to dazzle you with the data. You have these maps in your packet. So. Kim, I'm going to share, so you should be able to go.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. I do have a slideshow, a PowerPoint, which will repeat a little bit of what Sue has just said. So bear with me. We won't dwell on it for a long time, but I always feel it's useful to see it one more time, kind of going through here. So. There we go. So thank you. I'm Kim Sapunar. I work with the Council of Governments, and thank you for having me here tonight. And I'm happy to answer questions, and we'll go through this. I have slides this evening that are going to show again the 3 alternative, your current boundaries and the 3 alternatives that we have in your map product. I also have maps and tables that show the race and ethnic population distribution in Newberg, and with the potential of each of the 3 alternative boundaries overlaid on top of that. It is part of the analysis that's done as required by the Secretary of State. And then finally, I have actually the mapping software available. If you have specific questions and need to go down to the block level, I'm able to share my screen and to do that and answer your questions. So let me kind of start by just kind of, we'll kick off and take a look at the alternatives again. Of course, as we said, redistricting is necessary every 10 years. It rebalances the populations for any city or district that elects by representative area. And so the purpose is to rebalance the population into equal districts, and it's mandated by the Secretary of State. There is a little less time to do it this juncture around the, because there was a delay in the release of the census data for the 2020 census data, but I feel that we'll be able to meet any deadlines. The Secretary of State has not actually issued a deadline just yet. They're kind of just saying, hurry up. They're sort of generally saying, please do it in a timely manner. But I think that we're on schedule to be able to meet any of those requirements that would be going for them. Redistricting, of course, is driven by, the process is predominantly driven by two things. It's the data and the criteria from the Secretary of State. And this is just a little graphic as a refresher. It's the data that we receive from the census is at actually the block level, which is the smallest geography that the census produces information at. So the block level is aggregated into small block groups, and then that's aggregated into census tracts. And very often you may well see data that's summarized by census tract. That's generally the most common way that we see information. But it is at a very small level, and it can make it a little bit challenging when you are essentially aggregating those small blocks to create a new district boundary, because they come in different shapes and sizes and different densities of population. And that's why your resulting districts look a little bit, they may look a little funny because they're adding a block or leaving a block in and out. And of course, as Sue just said, the Secretary of State issued the redistricting directive and guideline that came out in September. Of most concern is that districts must be contiguous and they must have equal population. And the goal is to have a target population equally distributed among your districts with a plus or minus factor of 5%. And that's not necessarily issued by the Secretary of State per se. That has been vetted basically in case law over the last 40 years of census information. The same information, the same census layer is what's actually used for redistricting at all levels. So from Congress to our state legislature and down, the census blocks are what is aggregated. Additional considerations can be considered in this process as long as the primary consideration of the Secretary of State is met first, that those criteria and that any additional considerations are not in conflict with the directive from the Secretary of State. And so we were able to send out a survey link to our council members and the mayor to just kind of solicit some of the feedback of what did you have concerns about the current district that you represented or the neighborhoods that were in the area that you represented, or were there any concerns in general? And from that survey, which was just sort of summarized, these are just a couple of the sort of common themes, I think, that came back from a number of the council members which makes a lot of sense, keep our neighborhoods largely intact within districts, don't subdivide them. Keep the Edwards School and community intact, if possible, within District 3, that the university may be a consideration, splitting or not splitting, basically George Fox there. In general, thinking about the future of where Annex properties are going to be coming into the city, although that can be a consideration, it doesn't necessarily, our goal is still to balance our districts with equal population as they are at the moment, and what's tied to the information, to the data that we've received. Is it Jacqueith Park and the churches in District 2 be incorporated and stay in District 2? And if we have mobile home parks and some of the apartment complexes, to keep them intact and not subdivide them into various districts. I think that almost all of those concerns have been addressed in all of these alternatives. Because they're very reasonable accommodations, and they're already reflected in much of the the existing boundaries that you currently have reflected. This map just is showing the 2020 data and the current boundaries. And this was the first assessment we did to see what kind of balancing. This is a little bit of, I try to think of it sometimes like one of those kid puzzles where you have to slide the tiles around to make the puzzle match, where we need to adjust the district populations, some a little higher, some a little lower. So currently, this is the way your current districts shake out. And of these, districts 1, 3, and 5 are below target level. And the target would be basically the current population of Newberg, which is 25,138 divided by 6. So the goal is that each district would be representing 4,190 people. And so districts 1, 3, and 5 are below the target, and 2, 4, and 6 are above the target. And as our existing boundaries, only District 2 would be within that 5% margin. So essentially 5 out of your 6 districts must be adjusted to better balance the population. I have 3 alternatives here this evening. We'll go through these and we can certainly adjust if there are changes or tinker with them, or see that if there's something, if we need to present another iteration of them, that's totally on the table. We can take a look at that. All 3 of them are not dramatically different from your existing boundaries. The first has the first 2 very minimal changes, and the third alternative was really to try to keep the dividing line between districts 5 and 6 along Highway 99 as it went through town, if that's a consideration. So you've seen these are in your packet, but we'll take a look at them this way. Alternative 1, the main changes for alternative 1 is that District 3 here moves a little bit farther north of 5th Street, and then just I think 1 block because it's been reconfigured. District 1 moves a little bit to the west, just into the edge of District 2, and to the east over to Hewlett Avenue. And District 5 expands by 2 census blocks from into District 2 and then over Highway 99. So what this map winds up showing is it's shaded by what a potential new district would be, but the black line is your existing boundary. So it gives you an indication of where a shift would take place between them. The result of that configuration gives us this table. So all of the districts are now within, they're within 5% above or below the target. And in fact, the largest is District 4 with 137 people more than the target, and it comes in at just over 3%. So that just kind of gives you an idea of kind of where that the plus or the minus winds up falling in one of these examples. The second alternative, the largest geographic change in this example is this large census block, which is currently in District 4, is shifted over to District 5. This one particular large area actually has a fairly large population in itself. It's 371 people are there. And District 1 moves a little farther to the east to Elliott Road and crosses Highway 99. And District 3 moves up just a little bit over its existing boundary. And then of course, District 5 comes down over Highway 99. This configuration results in a table that, again, all within the 5% plus or minus deviation for each of the districts, with the largest being District 2 with 172 people over the target, and District 5 with less than 113, less than the target. And the third alternative was to try to take an effort to retain a dividing line between Districts 5 and District 6, leaving it on Highway 99. And in this example, District 2 creeps over a little bit to the edge of District 4, so that and District 1 creeps up and over like along the railroad line into District 2. And in this instance, this District 3 would expand and move into this census block that kind of creeps down. This is Corinne Drive. And this is a unique feature in sort of the geography for Newberg, keeping in mind that that districts need to remain contiguous. So this kind of interestingly shaped census block that runs down the peninsula would still remain contiguous to District 3 and could be inclusive here. It does also have a fairly large population. This has a population of 467 people. So to include it into one district or another does make quite a bit of a population shift and change. The resulting table of that alternative, all of the deviation is less than 2%, 2% or less, just in terms of the target. And of course, if you kind of thinking about the math in your head, it's not very much that makes a plus or a minus in this. When you're talking about a 5%, it's really, we're looking at 209 people either over or under. So it's a fairly narrow margin to kind of look at. There is no problem with going right up to the boundary of 5%. It's just 5% is generally the accepted sort of legal guideline that's sort of been handed down and sort of keeping within one way or another. So what is also part of the requirement that the Secretary of State has is that data does need to be examined to make sure that we don't intentionally or unintentionally divide communities of a common interest with regard to race, ethnicity, or language spoken. And this statistic that I have a series of maps showing all three of the alternatives, actually our current district's boundaries, and then the three alternatives with a map showing the population that identify as who will identify either as Hispanic or all races other than white. And I just want to explain just a moment, the census asks specifically two questions. They ask about ethnicity. So they will ask in the decennial census, are you Hispanic, yes or no? And then there's a secondary question to identify your race. And you may choose which race you identify as, and you may also pick or one or more or two or more races. So the maps that I have here is showing actually the population that is Hispanic and or the non-white population or the all races other than white on this map, because you can certainly identify on the census as Hispanic and you may choose your race as white. This is a way of giving an indication of sort of ethnicity and race combined on a single map. So the lighter colors of the census block, and this is not by percentage, it's just total numbers to just sort of see. And obviously a larger geography, a larger area may have a higher population simply because it's a larger geography. I haven't translated these into percentage because we are aggregating population by number. And I have an end result that will give you what the percentages are. So the lighter the census blocks, the lower the just total population, and the brighter colors, the higher the number. So this is the current districts overlaid on top of the map. And we do this because we compare current boundaries with each of the alternatives. So this is the map for alternative 1. And again, the underlying map is not changing here. This is showing the same representation of all races other than white and the Hispanic population. But this is now showing the suggested alternative 1 boundary. So that it changes here a little bit going up, moving a little bit farther north on 3rd and to the east for District 1, and then District 5 coming and crossing over Highway 99. And I have a table of comparison, which is our current districts and the alternative 1. And I can certainly make all of this. You have some of this information that's in your packet because I have a complete table, but this particular comparison I can make available as well. really there's very little impact because all of the difference between districts from our current boundaries to alternative 1 is approximately 1%. And in doing this analysis for each of the alternatives, actually there was very little shift. And in part that's because there's not a dramatic shift, I think, for any of the boundaries substantially. Same thing, alternative 2, same existing underlying data, and then with the new boundaries. So in this one, boundary 5 moves and incorporates that census tract, and 5 comes down over here across Highway 99, and then a little bit to the east for District 1. And the resulting comparison for this one, this is just as an example, District 5 has a shift of just almost 3 percentage points, but I have to explain a little bit of the math behind that. The current district for 5 is sort of underpopulated. So as we balance them and make them all about even, there's a subtle shift in that change. And again, not a particularly dramatic change in the percentage. They're all kind of within reason. And then finally, alternative 3, similarly, this is the one where we're trying to keep this boundary intact. So the boundary changes a little bit between District 1 and District 2, and between District 2 and District 4. And it goes ahead and it incorporates this little peninsula for District 3. And so again, here's an example that although the population, I'm going to switch this next one that compares between our current, so that although in District 3, the population of persons who identify as Hispanic or races other than white increased in the alternative for District 3, because the whole, as a percentage, it didn't change very much because District 3 was was on the low end of population. As we bring its total population up, it basically, it balances out by a few percentages. So in summary, I mean, I felt like doing this is something that the Secretary of State requires and asks to do. It's all 3 of the alternatives have very minimal impact, which I think is a positive thing. It doesn't go to show that we've intentionally subdivided a community of concern or interest. It doesn't look like they've been shifted dramatically from one location to another in any of the representation that we currently have. I have to bring up, this is a census anomaly. so that's a kind of a bit of the overview of the 3 alternatives, and then the alternatives showing the distribution of the Hispanic population and all races other than white in the tables. Your staff is aware of this, that the census data in 2020 identified this donut in the middle of the data and is actually excluded from the population count at the census block. There are 220 people who are in this location, and the census boundary has been, the city has forwarded it to the Census Bureau. They have a boundaries and annexation update process, and it has been forwarded to them. It's pending. It was not incorporated when the redistricting data or the decennial census data was collected. So we checked with our staff at the COG checked with PSU, who is some of the census officials, because they designate they're one of the clearinghouses for census data in the state. And there's really not much we can do about it. You have to go ahead and redistrict with the data as it's given and presented and make your decision. It is a prime candidate for being submitted to the count correction program, which I'm sure the city will do, because it will, when it's corrected, it will adjust your official city population and increase it by 220 people. But at the moment, the Census Bureau technically thinks that this little pocket of humanity isn't an official part of the city limits. Or I shouldn't say city limits. It's not part of the official city population count. So the one thing that there's not much to do about it, as I said, because we're directed to use the data as it is. But this is in District 6, and so it is an option to choose an option or alternative in which the population of District 6 is slightly lower, knowing that it should be adjusted when the census finally gets a hold of their data and corrects it on your behalf. Just briefly, the next steps are will address your comments and concerns on these alternatives. I can revise them accordingly. When you're comfortable with these alternatives, I have the ability to make an online and interactive map in which you can make that available if you'd like public comment or public feedback from that. But at this juncture, if you would like, I'll stop sharing the screen for just a moment. I can bring up one of the maps that has actually the population of each of the individual blocks, or if you have a specific question about one of the alternatives, I can bring that open and share the screen with you or answer any of your questions.
Folks, questions? I guess, Kim, the 220 people that should be in District 6.
Yes.
Does one of the alternatives that you have now, does that incorporate that?
Well, I have these taped to my wall. I have
all
I
right.
look over here. So in both alternative 1 and alternative 2, I have a slightly lower population in District 6. I mean, by configuration, 78 less in alternative 1, 89 less in alternative 2. I didn't specifically target to try to minimize it to,
Right.
To maximize the less than 5%, but those two alternatives, they are lower. And then even alternative 3 it's at 66 over. So we're still talking, and again, people who work in the census stuff always say, just about this point, I know it's new data and we're doing it. They say, yeah, wait till next census. We do always have the opportunity, and you do have the opportunity to, if you choose to make an adjustment before the next census if it's important, but certainly it's the best effort based on the data that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments, folks? Okay, Mike.
So I guess I'm not quite understanding how this is going to process. Are you at your level, or is it going to happen at the state level? They're just going to pick out what alternative best works? Is that how it is? And this is just more or less information for us?
It's your decision.
Oh, it's completely our decision. Okay.
Completely your decision.
Are you wanting to hear? I mean, I can give you my point of view if that makes any difference.
I'm welcome. Yes. I mean,
okay. All right. I mean, I kind of like the boundary line, like you were saying, option 3, where it just keeps Highway 99W as a boundary line. And it seemed like, as much as I could tell, is that it was all pretty evened out at that point.
Stephanie.
I was just going to say that I know we don't factor in what is coming, but being in District 6 and knowing that block that you're talking about, and that there is some new development happening right behind that block, I guess for me, I mean, all of these options are fine. I don't have any problem with any of these options, but for me, number 3 would be the lowest on the list just because of that block. And then but also I'm District 6, so I know what's going on in there, and I know that there's also Crestview Crossing and those other things. So I know there's other building going on. So, we can't just tailor it to my district, but I was just going to say that number 3 is lowest on my list, although I do agree with Mike in that 99 divider line is sort of a easy boundary for me. So I'm sort of, on the fence about that.
Jules.
Yeah, and similarly, I also have a preference for map 1 or map 2, also because I like the railroad being a divider. between, I think it's Elisa's district or one of the districts, and I think mine. So that's number 3 is my least favorite option into those.
Anyone else? You know, I don't recall, Kim, does the option number 1, does that fall along the 99W and Railroad, or does that?
Option 1, District 5 dips over, District 5 would dip over highway. You can share my screen. Did you say number 1?
Option 1.
Option 1. So option 1. Yes, option. So oh, sorry, I have to hit the share button. So option 1. So remember, it would be the shaded area would be the new area. The black line is your existing boundary. So in this one, and it's because District 5 had to add more population. So we have to expand it one way or another. And in fact, I'm gonna just it's a little, I don't mean to boggle the eyes, but I'm gonna just drag it over here a minute. When we're taking a look at some of these blocks, it's just, for example, look at the north section up here of District 5. Well, there's no population to speak of here. This is where ADEC is, and it's north, and it's some ag land, is a vineyard, right? So you can add or subtract some of these blocks almost easily from a district. They may look funny, but there's not a great population. But for District 5, I was looking to increase the population. And so I wound up dipping across Highway 99, because you'll see these 2 blocks down here of 180 population. This is where the hospital, I mean, you all probably know this better than I, but this is where the Providence is, and Fred Meyer, but there are apartment complexes and a retirement complex in the edge of these 2 blocks right here. So they actually have a fairly high concentrated population. If we're trying to expand the population for District 5 because it's low, and we cross over here, that's where your commercial property is, there's actually not quite as much population. And we're back to a bit of the game, in that your district must be contiguous. So we could drop down and we could, for example, take a block, and I'm going to show one more thing here. See this block here where I see the 100 value. So if we put it into another district, it encompasses, it's nested a whole series of smaller blocks in the middle. They have to go, they're part and parcel together, because you can't take the donut and can't leave the hole in the donut in different districts. So it's a fascinating process to go through, and really think about it, sort of trying to be driven by data. And that's kind of why 2 of the alternatives do have a district that crosses over Highway 99, because your current boundary does not. It runs along there, but we just really need to beef up the population for District 5. So it's got to go somewhere. It either has to kind of go to the west, and then take a little from District 1 and 2. That means that it's a little bit, they're all snaked around. So that one's a little mind-boggling it's a little dizzying to look at when you look at all the tiny numbers, but I do it for reference. So alternative 1, so think blue, not the black line, and then alternative 2, also think it's the yellow. So it's not the black line, that's your current boundary. So I did want to try to mimic your current boundary on Highway 99, but it's a bit of a challenge, simply because of where you've experienced the growth and where you need to sort of allocate the growth. But I do understand. I know you have a development that's coming in District 5, right out here across the street from the hospital. And I know that there's land being developed in the north end of town in District 4. And then of course, this data has got this hole in it that belongs in District 6. So
What did you do with alternative 3? I did.
And one more, and alternative 3 does, so alternative 3 does keep the boundary line between Highway 99, but we get a bit of this, we get this peninsula gets
yeah.
added to District 3.
Gotcha.
So think the orange shading.
Yep. Oh, boy.
And we can add 1 or 2 of the little, there's, I think I could add these 2 blocks and maybe this one here to District 3, but it starts at tipping point. So I didn't know whether that was from a standpoint as you as councilors and mayor, that if that doesn't feel like the right division of that neighborhood, if that neighborhood needs to be inclusive in one district or another, that would be something that definitely we need your feedback with.
Well, Denise.
I don't, because we all run at large, the districts are almost meaningless. I mean, they have some people call us, but I get calls from all the districts, right? We all do. If they know you, they call you. So I don't think it's as important as landmarks because you're not out campaigning in your district. You're not out doing those kinds of things. It's not really that relevant to the counselor job the way we run at large.
Mm-hmm.
Mike.
So that's interesting, Denise, that you brought that up because I was just sitting here thinking about that. So what if we didn't have districts? Would this all be mute? I mean, what would be the purpose of it?
Sue will answer.
So because it's in the charter, you would have to take it to election to take it out of the charter. So, but it is what it is, and we have to deal with it now.
Well, and yes, in terms of running for election and all of that, it doesn't matter. But each of you comes from a separate district, which does at least give us geographical representation, whether it means anything or not. You know what I mean? I mean, we don't have 6 people from District 3, for instance. You know what I mean? So there is some relevance there, I guess. Any other comments or questions?
I was gonna say the same thing, Rick. It's still important.
Yeah.
There was a reason it was done that way, because if something is being built in District 6 and everyone gets mad and they all run, then you would have all representation from one district. And then when that one issue was over, people would the rest of the citizens would feel forgotten. So it's important to have people living in the district. It's not important necessarily for election time.
And I think, yeah, following that, it would seem to me that districts that make the most geographical sense, I know you've got to do it on population, but the prettier map, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. With the fewer peninsulas, I guess, I don't know. It would be just given that same idea. But anyway, any other comments or questions, folks? Now, Kim and Sue, you're going to have to tell us if we've given you enough to go on, or would you like more than that?
Well, we got some feedback that we needed. I think at this point, are you wishing that we do the maps with the meta tags that Kim suggested? I had put that in the scope of work for the COG and asked the public to comment on it. And if so, what length of period? Or do you feel that you want to just give consensus tonight on 1, 2, or 3 and have us bring it back for a public hearing? I have to mention that we are up against a deadline. I reviewed James's memo from earlier this year, and they had put in February 8th. Our charter, of course, is sufficiently vague as to say within a reasonable amount of time. Yeah, poor James, I'm put him through the torture rack doing that intellectual exercise. But the issue is that the 2022 election cycle will begin after Memorial Day weekend of 2022, but I generally get my packets ready for candidates in April, and I have already had people asking, so I can't prepare those if the maps aren't set, Because I have to tell people, will you qualify because you live in this district or that district? So I didn't know if James had anything to contribute to the deadline. The way to the deadline.
No, I think that summarizes it. I think that it would be helpful from just from an election standpoint to have that kind of fixed path, if you will.
Right. We've been hearing sooner rather than later because they'll need to be, it needs to go to the county clerk and it needs to go to the Secretary of State. And election precincts are drawn up. So in general, sooner rather than later, but of course, I want you to be comfortable with the process that you go through here. And as I said, it's certainly an option to make them available as online maps, or if you just feel that they can be available through this process or posting. I know that you have a dedicated webpage on the redistricting process for the city's website, which is better than most cities. That's wonderful. So
in your experience, if we were to put it out to the public, how long should it be up, do you think?
Well, the city of Salem just finished their process and they had a 2-week comment period. And they had fairly complex, they had 3 alternatives that were fairly complex because they have very opinionated neighborhood associations, which are chartered and part of the city structure. But they did a 2-week comment period and cut it off. Same thing, just feeling that they needed to be able to kind of move forward.
All right, thoughts on that, folks? Public comments, maybe we take that first. Any thought? I'm always game to give the public more information rather than less if we have the option. So I see head nodding to that. Is that a general feeling? Yeah, everybody? Yeah, sort of. Okay. And I think 2 weeks sounds like, Kim suggested, sounds good to me. Any idea what this will cost us in additional COG fees?
I can pull up I do know that you did an overall contract with the Council of Government with all the bells and whistles. So you have set aside the budget to do it. You don't have to do it. And in fact, my work has gone along, we're kind of doing this piece and we're doing the 3 alternatives. So if you would like to, we can pull up the contract. If you choose not to do an online map, it'll save you money. That's true. I can certainly you can certainly take your existing maps and embed them in your own website and do an update or post them on Facebook. What I can do with an online map is it allows you've seen them, you have GIS staff as well. So you can zoom in, you could see the boundaries and you could zoom in. I can even add a comment feature so that people would be able to sign in or give their comment and comment on the map specifically. And generally we do either a map that has 3 tabs across, alternative 1, alternative 2, alternative 3, and they could leave their comments. We do it for 2 weeks and they're gathered in the cloud. I would have to email them back to you. It's a level of, I will say actually the maps were out and the city of Salem didn't get very many comments through their online system. Instead, people who were interested in the process kept in touch and emailed because they went to the city's website and it said any comments, questions, or we were on the agenda. So I don't know, it wasn't necessarily robustly used as a widget per se.
So Mr. Mayor, as the manager of this contract, I can assure you that we did put the money in the budget. And in the staff report, it states up to $10,000. I've never done this before. It only happens once every 10 years. So I had to build a scope of work that just kind of said, okay, we could scalable. Mm-hmm. We could do this and this and this and this, and want to have it in the contract that we could also do this and this and this, because frankly, I'm not a mind reader and I wouldn't be able to tell what the council wanted to do or not. So I had to get the contract executed and did so in the best faith possible. I just think that you want to be careful about, counting your pennies so closely, you're shortchanging a process that only happens once every 10 years. So that's my only comment on that. I'm certainly willing to do as Kim has suggested and put the maps on the website and field emails for the council, to garner the public feedback. So.
All right, thoughts on that, folks? An interactive map or a more static map, I guess what it comes down to.
Interactive.
Interactive, anybody? Interactive? I think we got head nods, thumbs up for interactive, looks like. All right, cool. And the other part was, okay, given that we've got a 2-week period, you don't need to know what our opinions are at this point because we're gonna wait to hear from the public. And then we'll be back maybe after that to figure out what the next step is.
I'll take these 3 alternatives. I'll create an online map forum platform for you that can collect comments. And as soon as that's available, we'll host it and you can give yourself a 2-week window. I have to look at I'm sorry, I didn't quite think about what the turnaround would be for that. I'm pretty quick.
But it is the 20th of December too, though, so.
It is, and I am going to take half of Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off. So I think that I can have it up. I can have it up and ready and to launch at probably that first week of January. It should be available and launched, and then so you could have public comment for the first 2 weeks of January. Probably be done by January 15th.
Okay.
If you wanted to.
That'll work timing wise, Sue and everybody, and James. So it still looks like you're muted.
I
Sue.
swear the most Googled phrase of 2021 is "you're on mute." Sorry, it's not as popular as the most favorite word or whatever, but anyway, my apologies. I think it would work. Your second meeting in January is the 18th. And I'll have to chit chat with James about process. I mean, I had to look back 20 years and see how they adopted before, and I do believe it was done by ordinance. So, if we brought it back to you on the 18th and could have an ordinance for February 3rd, then it would be effective we could do it effective upon passage.
Okay.
If we wanted to declare an emergency. I see James head nodding. So we'll chit chat about, we love our lovely processes and all of that, but we'll figure that part out. So yes, I think.
And as you said, they'll have a meeting then the 18th, then that would give you feedback. That would give you a set of feedback.
I think so. Yeah.
For that meeting on the 18th, I think that timing would work well.
Correct. And then I think we could do it the adoption of the first meeting in February. But we could put in an emergency clause because we're running up against, I think Miller Nash had recommended February 8th for our adoption. So, okay, we'll figure it out.
Right, sounds good.
Great.
Kim, I just got to say, that this must be so much fun doing for Newberg. I could only imagine what it would be like statewide. I just can't even imagine.
I'm telling you, it was a very interesting perspective, and I even thought, boy, it's very easy to complain about people who gerrymander, and I thought it's almost easy to do it inadvertently. So I had I had some sensitivity to it, not blatant, but it's an interesting process. So no, it's been great.
All right, well, awesome. Anything else, folks, for Kim or Sue? All right, well, thanks to both of you, and
thank you very much then.
What the public has to say, and we'll be back at it in January. So, all right.
Thank you.
All right, Happy New Year. Happy holidays, Kim. Happy New Year.
Thanks, Mike.
And let's see. All right, guys, I got 10 of, so why don't we plan to come back at 7 and get the business session, the last city council business session of the year. So here we go. We'll see you back at 7 o'clock. Okay, good. It's 7 o'clock. So let's call the city council business session for December 20th, 2021 to order. There is an agenda in Spanish on our website. A roll call, please, Sue.
Councilor McBride.
Here.
Councilor Cofield. Councilor Urnell Holloman.
Here.
Councilor Martinez Plancarte.
Here.
Mayor Rogers,
Present.
Counselor Bacon,
Here.
and Counselor Finley.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, all present with the exception of Counselor Cofield.
Thank you very much. All right, the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I can see my flag in the background. There it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. All right. Well, thank you all. All right. So let's lead off item number 4. This is the city manager's report. City Manager Worthy, please.
Thank you, Honourable Mayor and councillors. Before I get into the statistical part of the month, which is going to be a PowerPoint in just a moment, I wanted to go over a couple of items about Fund 31. So I was asked to have a quick look at Fund 31 and see roughly where we're going to be at the end of this financial year, because we are somewhat concerned about it. While this is not as complete as the full budget analysis will be later in the year, I did look at some basic assumptions. I did not look at the unemployment lines within each group in Fund 31 because they're relatively small, but I did focus on the other labour lines because I know that's where the problems may lie. I looked at where we should have been on December the 1st versus where we actually were at December the 1st. And then I annualized the actual numbers to predict where we would end at the end of this financial year. When we do the budget process in the new year, we will have a more accurate picture about this. But I can say with confidence that at this time, we will be at least $162,000 over budget in Fund 31. But we may be somewhat higher than that due to legal fees that have not arrived yet. We can also know that at this time, there is a structural deficit in Fund 31 of $201,000. Now, the budget that we're going to do this year has to try to balance out Fund 31 with the general fund, from which the money comes. And luckily, the general fund is in a very strong position relative to Fund 31. So we can do that. Anyway, that's the rough summary. Actuals, 162,000 and structural 201. And these are things that we need to address. And so with that said, I would like to move into other statistics. And so Sue, if you could bring up the PowerPoint, thank you.
Will, if I could just mention one thing on Fund 31. So everybody, so as you know, that's admin services. And I just want to underscore a little bit of what Will just said. For a number of years now, we've heard about the problem, the structural deficit with the general fund. But you see that this is a bit of a different narrative than what we've heard in the past. So I just wanted to underscore that. So thank you.
You're welcome, Mayor Rogers. So this is going to be our statistics for December 20th, and it represents the second part of my new reporting pattern. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So you're going to see the numbers for the latest month of record, and those are going to be on the left-hand side. And then over the months to come, you're going to see the monthly chart start to fill out to give us a trend line. So within community development and planning, there were 7 planning decisions of all sorts, and there were building permits issued for 3 units or ADUs. Next slide, please. And then you can see that for general permits, there were 95 issued, and we conducted 367 building inspections. And so you'll see that as we go along month after month, and then hopefully year after year, we'll develop our trend lines. Next slide, please. In community engagement, we had 32 residents use our form to ask questions about departments or of departments. And we had 1,917 social media engagements, bells and whistles, likes, questions, whatever it might be. Next slide, please. At this time, we have 3,597 followers on Facebook, 356 on Twitter, and 221 on LinkedIn. Next slide, please. In economic development, you can see that we had contacts, and a lot of these were about ARPA this time, contacts with 8 private businesses, although that has now risen because of the survey that we did this month. 14 community events visited, 13 partner or public organizations either contacted or their forums visited. Next slide, please. In finance, you can see this whopping $1.595 million in accounts payable for invoices and electronic payments of all sorts, and $500,000 of payroll was processed. And remember, that was done with Excel spreadsheets and cutting and pasting. In recruitments, we advertised 5, hired 4, had 3 separations, and we had 9 workers' compensation, OFLA, FEMLA claims of all sorts. And of course, many of these are not bad things, they're just things that happened. Next slide, please. During this period, IT resolved 159 service tickets for problems that had come up citywide, and they also responded to 9 issues or other problems that occurred after hours. Next slide, please. The library reopened to the public on 10/5/21, and that's why the door count was particularly low compared to the good old days, at 4,805 persons visiting the library. But circulation for all types of circulation events was 19,643. Next slide, please. In public safety, there were 2,075 calls for service. Amongst other activity, we had 360 traffic stops conducted, 172 citations, and 128 warnings were issued. Next slide, please. Notably, and I'm tracking this through the holiday season, we had 6 DUIs, and then that fell to 4 DUIs on the listed months. And we're hoping that it stays low throughout the holiday period. Don't drink and drive, folks. There were 939 work orders completed in public works during the listed period. And you can just imagine each work order represented 1 pipe repaired or 1 thing fixed or 1 hole dug in the ground. That is a monstrously large amount of work. Next slide, please. In the production of water, there was 59.1 million gallons created in October. And on the other side of the ledger, 81.6 million gallons of wastewater were treated in October. Next slide, please. So that is the trends for the last month. It's a bit dry right now because you can't really draw a lot of conclusions, but obviously over time, we're going to get a very strong idea of our city activity and be able to start to see some trends emerging over time. And this is the type of information that I think councils deserve to have when they're thinking about their decisions. I'd love to take any questions if there are any.
Here you go, folks. Questions, comments? Not seeing any. Well, I think I probably speak, well, I'll speak for myself. I think this is great. I think this kind of information is really, really useful. And as you say, will be more useful as we go into the future. It also gives you a good sense of all those police, calls for service. So anyway, I think that's great. So thank you. Any other comments, folks? All right. All right, moving along. I think we're on item 5A. This will be council appointments. I think we have before you requests for 5 reappointments and 11 new appointments to city committees. And I will entertain a motion if you are so inclined.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the mayor's reappointments and appointments to committees.
And a second,
Second.
and a second from Mike. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your left hands. All righty, thank you. All right, and thank you to Denise for the good work on getting this through. Let me read the names of those who have now decided to either re-up or first time. So for reappointments, Jeffrey Musall and Jason Dale to the Planning Commission, Molly Olson to the Budget Committee, Larry Hampton and Eugene C. Bell or EC Bell to Affordable Housing Commission. New appointments, Matthew Stidman, the Affordable Housing Commission, Patrick Johnson and Catherine Menninger to the Budget Committee, Joy Hughes and Deborah Burkle to Historic Preservation Commission, Connor Hanson and Jessica Harrington to the Planning Commission, Brett Atkins, Jesse Cad and Greg Stifler to the Traffic Safety Commission, and Jack Lyda to the Newberg Urban Area Management Commission. So thank you to all 16. And as we say many times, it takes many people, many volunteers serving on committees in order to keep the city running. So thank you all so very much. All right, let's move on now. Public comments. I understand we have none unless something has snuck in lately. We have none, then I will close public comments and move on to the consent calendar. Remember, we've pulled item 7C, but I will take a motion for the remaining if you are so inclined.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent calendar with the exception of 7C.
And a second. Elise with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your left hands. All righty, thank you so much. That passes unanimously, Sue. All right, let's move on to continued business. This is ordinance 2021-2890. On this, we will take a motion. This is a continuation from when we were last year, if you recall, for the second reading. So I will take a motion to read by title only if someone is so inclined. All righty.
Sorry, I lost my page. I'll do it. I just got to get there 1 second. If somebody else can, okay, I found it. No, I didn't.
I found it.
Thank you.
I went to open mine and it loads forever. So Mr.
Thank
Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve ordinance 2021-2890, read by title only.
I'll second it.
And Denise seconds. Thank you all very much. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor signify by raising your left hands. All righty.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to read the
I
title?
certainly will. I certainly will. Darn it.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you, James.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it. Before the council for adoption is ordinance number 2021-2890, an ordinance annexing 187.76 acres of 10 parcels, R3219-00300, R3219-DD-01600, R3219-00190, R3219-00191, R3229-02600, R3229-02200. That's the portion within the urban growth boundary. R3220CD-01900, R3220CD-02100, R3220CD-02300, R3229-00202. That's the portion within the urban growth boundary, and adjacent right-of-way and Newberg Dundee bypass, including parcels R3221-02300, R3221-02400, R3221-02500, R3221-02700, R3221-02800, R3221-02900, R3221-03000 into the Newberg city limits.
All right, I tried my very best to save your voice, James, but was not able to. All right, do you want a roll call vote, Sue? Yes, you do. All right.
It's an ordinance.
Let's have that then, please.
Counselor McBride,
Yes.
Counselor Yarnell Holloman,
Yes.
Counselor Martinez Blancarte,
Yes.
Mayor Rogers,
Yes.
Counselor Bacon.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Finley,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, ordinance 2890 passes 601.
All righty, that is very exciting. Next, if you have noticed, the mill is coming down as we speak. Well, Denise knows every morning at like 6:30 they start, so Denise definitely knows. But no, 7. It's 7. I know there's actually regulation. 7 o'clock is when they start. Anyway, but so that's exciting. So thank you, Doug, and thank you, James. Speaking of James, let's now move on to new business, and we can now hear about national opioid litigation settlements, item 7C.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, in front of the council for consideration is resolution 3783 in connection with some nationwide opioid litigation that is beginning to approach settlement. We've been tracking it for quite some time and wanted to share with the council that there is a pretty robust, fairly robust litigation going on nationwide where various state and local governments have brought claims in connection with the opioid crisis against a number of pharmaceutical manufacturers and distributors who distribute pharmaceuticals that contain opioids. And a settlement appears to have been reached with 3 of the distributors and 1 manufacturer. Janssen Pharmaceuticals as the manufacturer. That's a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson. And then the 3 distributors are AmerisourceBergen, McKesson, and Cardinal Health. The terms are still being kind of cemented, if you will, but generally speaking, it looks like the amount of the distribution that's going to the state of Oregon is about $21 million from the distributors and $325 million from Janssen. And right now, there are agreements that are being finalized with both the distributors and the manufacturers, and also an intrastate agreement between the state of Oregon and local governments about the allocation of funds. The split right now with respect to the funds is about a 45-55 split between the state and the local government. So 55% of the funding coming to Oregon would go to local governments, and then 45% would remain with the state. The payout, the way that the agreement is structured is that there's a formula included within the settlement agreements that basically incentivizes more local governments to sign on to the agreement, onto the settlement, and waive, claims to bring suits against these distributors or these manufacturers in connection with the opioid crisis. So the more local governments that sign up, the higher the payout. Right now, or at least the focus on this incentive structure is on cities with populations over 10,000. Hence the multiple calls I've been getting from my colleagues in different parts of the state, and I know that they're working in a number of local governments to get this in front of deciding bodies and make decisions. So I wanted to have this item kind of addressed or discussed separately because signing on to the settlement agreement would mean that the city would be waiving its rights to, or releasing its rights to bring claims against these particular this particular manufacturer and these distributors in connection with the opioid crisis. I will say that, you know, the city of Newberg doesn't have any sort of active or pending litigation against these particular companies, and so it's something that I think the council should consider. I would recommend that the council look to sign on with the other cities that are entering into this settlement. What this resolution would do, the terms have been kind of evolving pretty quickly. For example, we've got some term sheets that are being recognized as final yet this afternoon. They are pushing towards a deadline, if you will, to see what cities are in other counties, other local governments are interested in participating, and the deadline for that is January 2nd. So it is moving rather quickly, and this is on a number of agendas as we approach the end of the year. What this resolution would do would it would authorize Mayor Rogers or City Manager Worthy to sign on to the settlement agreements. It's obviously subject to the city attorney's office reviewing and approving, but it would allow for that sign on. You know, I guess one question that I think that I would expect to come is, you know, what type of payouts are we talking? It's, as I shared on the way that the agreement is structured, it incentivizes more cities with, or counties with 10,000 people or more to sign on, and the payout kind of fluctuates depending on that, right? And so it's tough to say that this is the exact figure, but just to provide a ballpark, if we get the full participation or 100% participation, the estimates right now is that the city of Newberg would receive $721,832. That would be paid over 2 durations based on the 2 different agreements, a 9-year duration with respect to the distributors, an 18-year duration with respect to the manufacturer. There is a very robust exhibit to the settlement agreements that identifies the different uses that these funds could be put towards. Generally speaking, there's quite a bit of flexibility on how the funds can be used, as long as it's being used to combat the opioid crisis. So, you know, just to provide a little bit of a flavor, you know, could the city, you know, partner with a nonprofit that focuses on providing supportive services to individuals that are struggling with opioids? Yes, right. Could the city use it to fund first responders or police as far as training or other tools or resources or equipment to respond? Yes. There's a wide variety, and I would expect that if the council decides to move forward, that this would not be the last time you'd be hearing from me on this topic, along with City Manager Worthy, to talk about how the council would like to go about using those funds. But it's a pretty robust list in that exhibit. So that's the resolution that's before you. Again, it would be the timeline would be January 2nd as far as signing on to the agreement, and then we would have more details, assuming that the participation is sufficient and the parties move forward. We'd have more details on obviously the amount of funding, and can further discuss the uses. But this resolution is designed to provide the authorization to Mayor Rogers, City Manager Worthy, to sign the agreement.
Right. Any questions for James, folks? All right. I will entertain a motion if someone is so inclined.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt resolution 2021-3783.
Second.
And Elise with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your left hands. All right, that looks unanimous, Sue. James, thank you so very much. Let's now move on to item 9, council business. Any business for the evening, folks? Yep, not seeing any. All right, well, how's about, I'm gonna go around and ask all of you, I'm gonna put you on the spot, all right? I'm going to ask first what you want for Christmas, and then secondly, what you want for the new year. All right. All right. Anyway, Sue, you get to start because you're in top left on my screen.
I want for Christmas some time off. So I get some time off from the city. And what I want for the new year is that we have how to put it, a stable election season. So that's what I hope for the new year.
Spoken like our elections officer. Yes. Will, you're next on my screen.
In terms of stuff for Christmas, I've kind of got everything I could need in the world. So whatever thing I get, especially from my in-laws, I love it anyway. For the new year, more civil talk, maybe nicer emails. That would be nice.
Mike, you're next on my screen.
What I want for Christmas, I guess, is just to enjoy the sights and sounds, maybe in a greater degree, the reason for the season, so to speak, in a greater degree than what I have before. For the new year, my daughter is a French horn player, and her and her husband live in Minnesota. She is coming out to do an audition for second chair at the Oregon Symphony, which means if she gets that, she's moving back home where she has not been since she graduated from high school, and she's, what, 36 years old. So that would be a huge answer to my prayers. So that's
that is awesome. Oh, best of luck to her. That is super awesome. All right. All right, Doug, you're next on my screen.
For Christmas is to have my kids and my grandkids, all of them, have a happy and Merry Christmas. And hopefully Santa will show up. For the new year, I think it would be calmness, civility, less stress. Let's all work together. We're trying to create things and achieve things here.
James.
Sure. For Christmas, some may not want this, but I know my kids have been asking for snow. So maybe a little bit of snow, but not too much where we can't, handle it as a here in Oregon. I'm also from Cleveland, as you know, so it's weird. It's still weird not seeing, pounds and pounds of snow. For the new year, it's as much as the Zoom meetings can be effective, it would be really great to get back to in person. And I know that even just looking at our meetings, the council meetings here, I know I've been able to meet most folks in person at one point or another, but it's just not quite the same. So something in person would be great if we can do that in the new year.
All right, Stephanie.
So I didn't know what I was going to say I want for Christmas, but James said it. We would really like just a little bit of snow, just enough for the kids to go out and play, but not so much that, our public works guys have to work overtime and all over the place. So that's what I want for Christmas. For the new year, I would love for us to get a handle on COVID. So that Elise can work fewer hours, my kids can go to school as much as they need to, and that our hospital staff is not so overloaded and so overworked. So that is what I hope for the new year.
Denise.
For Christmas, I want, I'm on vacation. So I want to read books for fun because I never get to do that. And that's really all I want. James, being snowed in is my favorite holiday ever. Best memories in the world of being snowed in. for next year, Facebook to crash and stay crashed, and the world to be kinder, to just to be kind.
Right. Elise.
These are some really good ones. For Christmas, I'm really praying that I don't get called into work. So kind of on Stephanie's line, last year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's were all taken by different acute care exposures. So I'm really hoping that I get to hang out with my family. That would be the best Christmas probably I could have. New Year is that we at least don't continue on the trajectory of COVID. I think it's always going to be around a little bit, but I would love if we could get away from current. And I also want Facebook to crash. I would be so happy if our town, specifically right now, our town would stop posting on Facebook and start meeting at Coffee Cottage instead.
Very good. Jules.
For Christmas, I just want things to slow down and maybe to use this time to reflect. And hopefully other community members use time to reflect as well. And for New Year, I want to do more running and hopefully folks to be able to get out there and entertain themselves in physical activity and other things other than Facebook. So that's what I would like. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I posed this question, of course, didn't think of it before I posed it. So anyway, Will touched on it. I'd like to see very few calls for the police over this holiday season. I'd like to see very few, if none, DUIs would make me very happy. You know, and also for I would like the staff of the city of Newberg, every staff person to have an enjoyable, restful, peaceful holiday season, because Lord knows they deserve it. And then in the new year, I will paraphrase what was said by one of the department heads. And if I've said this before, stop me. But one of the departments said, when I said, you know, how are we doing with the city? And he said, so I'm tipping it off, it's a he, said, we are this close to really doing some stuff in this city. And I believe next year we will really do some stuff. And I think it's going to be for the betterment of all. And that will be shown. This is somebody else mentioned this, that a story will be written. This is what I hope for in 2022, that shows that the divisiveness that for which we have been now renowned in the newspaper will be replaced by a story that says how this community got together and found a way to talk. That's what I hope happens in 2022. So there you go. All right. Anything else, folks, for the good of the order? All right. Wonderful Christmas to all. Thank you, right? Will and Doug and James and Sue. Thank you all so very much. And all of you all volunteers, thank you so much, right? Thank you. Have a great time. And Mike, we'll be thinking about your daughter and all of you with little kids. I'm so jealous. So have a great time. So, all right. Thank you guys. Thanks so much.